Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Allahumma allimna ma yanfa'una wanfa'na bima 'allamtana wa zidna 'ilma. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Continuing in the explanation of Furu' al-Fiqh by Imam Ibn Mibrad, we reached last time speaking about Tahara, which is the first condition for Salah. And we reached At-Taharatul Kubra, the major purification, which is al-Ghusl, done to remove al-Hadath al-Akbar, the major state of impurity. And speaking about At-Tahara al-Kubra, the Imam said, وَأَمَّا الطَّهَارَةُ الْكُبْرَى فَتَحْتَوِي عَلَى سُنَّةٍ وَوَاجِبٍ. As for major purification, which is done by ghusl, when a person has a full body shower, this contains rulings which are sunnah, recommendations, and wajib, obligations. And as we said before in the issue of at-taharat sughra, in regarding to wudu, the Imam here, he didn't divide it up in the way that is well known among the Hanabila, in the mu'tamad, the relied upon position of the madhab. In that we would say that there's a shart, condition, and then there is a fard, or also known as a rukn, which is a pillar, and then there is a wajib, an obligation, and then there is sunnah, a recommendation, as how was explained in the previous lesson. So as for the sunnah, as for the wajib, he says, وَالْوَاجِبُ النِّيَّةُ. The first obligation, he said, is an-niyyah, to have intention, as how was explained also in wudu. And as we know, an-niyyah is, according to the majority of Hanabila in the relied upon position, it is a shart, a condition, not a wajib, because it's not part of the act of worship, rather it is something which comes before it. And then second he said, وَتَعْمِيمُ سَائِرِ الْجَسَدِ, to wash the whole body, to يُعَمِّمُهُ, to engulf it in water. And this is a fard, this is the single fard in al-ghusl, the single pillar of ghusl. It is to wash the whole body with water. And he says, وَالْمُسْتَحَبْ. As for the things which are sunnah, recommended, he said the first is غَسْلُ مَا بِهِ مِنَ الْأَذَى, to wash off whatever is on the body from al-mustaqdarat, things which are unclean, whether that thing is najis, such as al-bawl wal-ghayt, urine or feces, or ad-dam, blood, or if it's something which is tahir, pure, but it's mustaqdar, something which is seen as being filthy, such as al-mani, which is semen. The second sunnah in al-ghusl, it is al-wudu, يعني al-wudu qablahu, to do wudu at the beginning of when you start the ghusl. This is also a sunnah, a recommendation. And then the third thing he said is وَالْغَسْلُ ثَلَاثًا, to wash 3 times, as in to wash the parts of your body 3 times. That includes washing the head, the hair 3 times, and washing the rest of the body 3 times. وَالدَّلْكُ, which means to rub. When doing ghusl, to not just pour water on yourself, but rather to also rub your body with your hands. And this includes what he will mention later from تَخْلِيلُ الشَّعْرِ. And he says وَالتَّيَامُنْ, meaning to wash the right hand side of the body first before washing the left hand side of the body. So you wash the right side of your head, and then the left side, and the right side, then the right side of your body, then the left side of your body. And then he says وَغَسْلُ قَدَمَيْهِ, before that وَتَخْلِيلُ الشَّعْرِ, to run your fingers through your hair when washing it, since the obligation in al-ghusl is to wash the whole hair, باطنه وظاهره, to wash the outer part of the hair which is seen, and also the inner part which is underneath. The water needs to reach all of that. وَيَكْفِي فِيهِ الظَّنِّ, it is sufficient for a person to believe that it has reached all of the hair, it has reached the bottom of the head to the scalp. And if the hair is tied in braids, then يجب نقضها للحائض والنفساء. It's obligatory to open up the hair and wash it completely if the ghusl was obligated because of al-hayd, menstruation, or al-nifas, post-birth bleeding. In this case, it's obligatory to open the hair and wash it while it's opened. As for if the ghusl is for another reason, such as al-janaba, which is if a person has, for example, had intercourse, then in that case, the hair, it does not need to be opened up if it is braided. Rather, it's sufficient to wash it and to make the water reach the scalp. And it's not necessary to untie the braids for both a man and a woman. And he says, at-tasmiyah, saying Bismillah, this is, as we mentioned in wudu, this is a wajib according to the mu'tamad position, meaning that it's obligatory. If a person leaves it off on purpose, then the ghusl is not sahih, just as how we said about wudu. But if they leave it off out of forgetfulness, then it is sahih, because it is not a fard, meaning it's not a rukn, it's not a pillar, rather it's something which is obligated. And he says, وَغَسْلُ قَدَمَيْهِ فِي غَيْرِ مَوْضِعِهِ, to wash one's 2 feet in a different place to where they did ghusl. So if you were standing in a place, when it comes time to wash your feet, it is recommended that you move to a slightly different position to wash them. إِذَا لَمْ يَكُنْ مُبَلَّطًا. Here the Shaykh said the condition, as long that it's only recommended to wash your feet in a different place if the place you are washing it is not muballat, meaning it's not tiles, it's not something which the water just runs off. In such a case, then the Shaykh says that it is not recommended to move to a different place to wash it, but the relied upon position, the mu'tamad, is that it's recommended to move to another place to wash your feet, regardless of whether it is muballat, whether the ground is tiled or not tiled. And as we mentioned before, washing the feet would be included, of course, in wudu, and as we mentioned here, wudu is recommended to do before the ghusl or at the beginning of the ghusl. But if a person does the whole wudu and leaves off washing the feet, then at the end he washes the feet, فَلَا بَأْسَ بِهِ, then that's also fine. After that, the Shaykh says, وَالنَّوَاقِض, the things which nullify a person's wudu, and the things which nullify a person's tahara kubra, meaning it obligates them to do ghusl. And the first one he mentions is في الطهارة الصغرى ثمانية. There are 8 things which obligate a person to do wudu, as in it makes them in a state of hadath asghar. And the first thing which he mentioned is al-khariju min as-sabilayn, anything which comes out of a person's front passage or back passage. So the front private parts or the back. In such a case, whatever it is, whether the thing which exits is pure, tahir, for example, if it was like a dood, a worm, or if it was, for example, ma, just water, or anything else which is tahir, or if it's something which is najis, such as al-bawl wal-gha'it, urine and feces, or ad-dam, which is blood. In both cases, anything which comes out of the front or the back passage, this obligates wudu. The second thing is وَالْفَاحِشُ مِنْ غَيْرِهِمَا. مِنْ غَيْرِهِمَا as in مِنْ غَيْرِ سَبِيلَيْن, something which exits from other than the front or the back passage. Something which exits from other than the front or the back passage, either it is tahir or it is najis. If something tahir comes out of other than the front or back passage, then of course this does not break the wudu, such as a person spitting. This is something which is leaving his body, but his saliva is tahir, so this does not obligate wudu. If the thing exiting the body from other than the front and back passage is something which is najis, which is impure, then this najasa is also 2 types. Either the najasa is al-bawl wal-gha'it, urine or feces, or it's a different type of najasa, such as al-qay, vomit or dam, blood, and so on. If the thing which comes out of other than the two passages is al-bawl wal-ghayat, urine or feces, then it breaks the wudu mutlaqan in all cases, regardless of the amount. So for example, if a person's having an operation and they have to make a separate exit for his feces from other than its natural exit, then in such a case that would break the wudu even if only a small amount comes. And as for if it's other than al-bawl wal-ghayat, other than urine and feces, then it breaks the wudu if a large amount comes out. Al-fahish, yani al-kathir, something which is a lot. So if there's a cut and blood is coming out, it would not break the wudu unless the blood is a lot. And what's the definition of a lot of blood or a lot of any other najasa, any other impurity? Then that is ما يفحش في نفس كل واحد, what every single person or what that specific person sees as being a lot. So for example, person A might have a cut and the blood comes out, but they might see that this blood is not a lot. In their mind, this doesn't seem to be a lot of blood, so then this does not break their wudu. Whereas person B might have the same cut with the same amount of blood come out, but they might see it as being a lot in their mind, so in their case, for them it would have their wudu would have been broken. So that's al-fahish min ghayrihima. The third thing is zawal al-aql, which is for a person's intellect, for a person's consciousness to not be present, to be gone. And that's either bil-junoon, for a person to become insane, or al-ighma, that the person faints and is unconscious, or as-sukr, which is that person is intoxicated, or an-nawm, sleep. So these four things, they all break a person's wudu. بغير نوم يسير جالسا أو قائما. The one exception to this is نوم يسير, a light sleep, من جالس أو قائم, for a person who is either standing or sitting up straight. If a person is sleeping lightly, a light sleep while standing or sitting, then their wudu is not broken. As for if they are sleeping in a different position, such as laying on one side, or having your back to something, resting on something, or lying down completely, or in ruku' or sujud, in any of these cases, any amount of sleep breaks a person's wudu, even if it's light sleep. And how would you know if the sleep is light or not? Then it has many principles which are mentioned in larger books, such as, for example, if a person sees a dream, then this is automatically deep sleep. And for example, if a person cannot hear what's going on in their surroundings, then this is deep sleep. But if they hear it but aren't able to make out what's being said, then this is considered light sleep, nawm yasir. Then after that he says وَمَسُّ الْفَرْجِ, to touch the private part, al-farj, which is al-qubl wa-dubur, the front private parts or the back private parts. And here al-mas, to touch, he means al-mas bil-yad, with the hand. That includes al-kaf, the palm, and zahiruhu, the outer part of it as well, and all of the hand from the fingers up to the wrist. But it does not include the nails, because the nails are something, though they are part of the hand, they are something which are separate to it and something which can be removed. So the nails do not count, but any other part of the hand, the fingers or the palm or the back of the hand, all of this, if it touches a private part, then it breaks the wudu, whether that private part is the private parts of a man or a woman, and whether it's the front private parts or the back private parts, which is the rectum. So the front private part, it would be the penis for the man, and it does not include the scrotum. And for a woman, it would be the front private parts. And This breaks the wudu in all cases, whether it is done out of shahwa, out of desires, or بغير shahwa, or without desire. But the condition for al-mas, the touching, is that it has to be بغير حائل, without a barrier. So if it's with a barrier, such as clothing, then this does not break the wudu. It has to be بغير حائل. And likewise, whether the one is touching their own private parts or the private part of another person. And the next one is وَالْمَرْأَةُ بِشَهْوَةٍ, for a man to touch a woman with desire. So in this one, if a man touches a woman with shahwa, out of desire, then this breaks their wudu. Likewise, if a woman touches a man out of shahwa, out of desire, then this also breaks the woman's wudu. But if a man touches a man, or a woman touches a woman, then this does not break the wudu, even if it's out of desire. So that's the first thing. So it has to be the opposite gender. And this one, it's al-lamsu bil-yad aw bighayr al-yad, touching with any part of the body, whether it's the touching is being done with the hand, or with the foot, or with any other part of the body. And regardless of what part of the body is being touched of the woman, or of the opposite gender, whether it's the hand, or the foot, or any other part of their body, except for ash-sha'r, hair, and al-dhufr, nails, wal-asnan, and teeth, because these things are detachable and they're not part of the main body, since they can be cut off. So touching these parts would not break the wudu. And likewise, as we mentioned before, the condition here is also that it has to be بغير حائل, without a barrier. If it's with a barrier, then this does not break the wudu, even if it is with shahwa, with desires. And for this and the one before it, masul farj, touching the private parts, wa masu al-mar'ati bi-shahwa, to touch a woman with desire, the wudu is broken for the one doing the touching, al-lamis. As for al-malmus, the one being touched, their wudu is not broken. So if a man was to touch a woman with desire, then the man's wudu is broken, and the woman's wudu is not broken, even if she also has shahwa, also has desires at that time. Her wudu is not broken, because she is not the one doing the touching. She's not the fa'il. Likewise, if a person was to touch the private parts of another person, the one being touched, their wudu will not be broken. Rather, the one who is doing the touching, their wudu is broken. After that, he says, وَأَكْلُ لَحْمِ الْإِبِلِ. The sixth thing, he mentions eating the meat of al-ibil, the camel. And here, al-lahm means the meat in the sense of I believe it's the muscle tissue. So eating other than that, other than what is called lahm, linguistically, according to the Arabs, this would not break the wudu. So if a person eats al-kabid, eats, for example, the liver, or if a person eats, for example, the heart, al-qalb, or if they eat the kidneys, or a different part of the body which is not al-lahm, or if they eat the shahm, the fat of the camel, then this does not break the wudu. Only eating the lahm does, because this is a hukm which is ta'abbudi, which is, according to the madhab, restricted to what the text says, since it is a religious ruling, and the hikmah, or the illah, it is not clear. The reasoning given is not one which is spotted or understood from it. So we say this is hukum ta'abbudi. We do it as how the text mentions. And the seventh thing he mentioned is ar-ridda, which is apostasy. A'adana Allahu minhu. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from it. This also breaks a person's wudu. So a person who leaves Islam, their wudu is broken automatically. As you see here, the Shaykh mentioned only 7, but in the beginning he said at-taharatu sughra thamaniya is 8. So the 8th one, which is not mentioned here, it is ghusl al-mayyit, to wash a dead person, to wash a dead body. This breaks a person's wudu in the madhab. And al-ghusl here, the washing, means the one who physically washes the body, moves it, and so on. As for the one who pours the water and doesn't touch the body, then their wudu is not broken. And this is also a hukm which is ta'abudi, which is one where the illah is not explicitly mentioned, so we just do it as how the text mentions. Those were nawaqid al-wudu, the things which break a person's wudu. After that, the Shaykh goes on to mention nawaqid al-tahara al-kubra, the things which break a person's ghusl. وهي ستة, and this is 6 things that obligate for a person to do ghusl. The first is al-mani al-dafiq biladhatin, ejaculation, or in another sense, the exiting of al-mani, of semen, biladha, with desire. And al-dafiq means it bursts out, or it pushes out, not if it just streams out slowly. In another sense, the madhab says that the ghusl is obligated bi intiqal al-mani, by the mere movement of the semen within the body, even if it does not exit the body. But when there is intiqal al-mani biladha, the moving of the semen from its main place in the body as it moves out in the time of ejaculation, this movement of the mani is what obligates the ghusl. So, for example, if there was intiqal al-mani, the movement of al-mani, but it did not exit the body, then in such a case, the ghusl would still be obligated. And if the person does ghusl, then after the ghusl, the mani exits, the semen exits without a new ejaculation, as in it's not with ladha or dafq, it's not pushing out and coming out of desire, then here it would not obligate a second ghusl, as the ghusl was already covered by doing it for the intiqal mani, the movement of the mani. And the condition given here is as it being biladha, with desire, and bidafq, pushing out, ejaculating out, then this is لغير النائم, for someone who is not sleeping. As for a naim, a person who is sleeping, their ejaculation or their khuruj of al-mani, the exiting of semen from them, this obligates wudu, whether it's with desires or not. So whether they saw a wet dream or they did not, if they see al-mani present, if they see the semen which has exited their body, then this obligates for them ghusl. Since a person could have a wet dream and then not remember it, or they might not recall whether they had desires with it or not, since this was in their sleep. But since the mani is present, then it's obligatory for them to do ghusl for the naim, for the sleeping person. The second thing he mentioned is iltiqa'ul khitanain, literally meaning the connection of, or the coming together of, the two circumcised parts. And this is kinaya an al-jima'. This is another way of saying intercourse, which is taghibu hashafa, which is taghibu hashafa fi qubulin aw dubur, asli, the entering of the tip of the penis in the front private parts of a woman, or the back passage. Of course, entering into the back passage is haram, but that also obligates ghusl. And this also includes whether the entering of the penis is within a woman, or even an animal, or a bird, or a male. In all cases, this obligates ghusl, because these are furuj asliya, they are actual private parts, natural or original private parts. As for private parts which are not asliya, which are not the actual ones, such as, for example, the case of al-khuntha al-mushkil, then this does not obligate ghusl. So here he mentioned iltiqa al-khitanain. Then the next one, the third thing, it is, so in iltiqa al-khitanain, meaning al-jima', this obligates ghusl whether the person ejaculates or not. So this obligates ghusl for both the man and the woman, regardless of whether there's ejaculation or not. Rather, the mere entering of the hashafa, the tip of the penis, this is what obligates ghusl. And the third thing is Islamul kafir, a person who was a kafir becoming a Muslim, regardless of whether that person was kafir asli, an original kafir, or a murtad, person who had left Islam. In both cases, them accepting Islam obligates them to do ghusl. And the fourth thing is al-hayd, the person or a woman having menstruation. This obligates ghusl. وشرطه انقطاع الدم, for the menstruation or the blood to stop. After that, the woman can do ghusl. As for if there's no انقطاع الدم, as in the blood has not stopped, then they cannot do a ghusl. It would not be valid since the shart, the condition, is not present. The fifth thing is an-nifas, which is the blood after giving birth. This obligates ghusl. As for if the woman gives birth and there's no blood, then this does not obligate ghusl. If a child comes out and there's no blood, then this does not obligate her to do ghusl. And the sixth thing is al-maut, which is death. Yani maut al-muslim, a Muslim dying, it's obligated for the Muslims to wash that person, to give them ghusl. So this one is a bit different to the previous ones, in the sense that the obligation, it has to be fulfilled by other than that person. They cannot wash themselves, of course. They cannot do ghusl since they have passed away. And the istithna, the exception to this, is shaheed al-ma'rika or ma'raka and al-maqtul dhulman, the person who is killed in al-ma'raka, which is a battle, in a war, a Muslim killed in that, who is a shaheed, a martyr, having been killed by the enemy. Then this person, they are not given ghusl, rather when they die, they are buried as how they are. And the second one is al-maqtul dhulman, a person who is killed unjustly. This is also a type of shaheed, and they are also not given ghusl. As for other types of shaheed, since some ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ mention other forms of martyrdom, a shahada, such as a person who is ghariq, who dies in drowning. This person is considered a martyr in Islam. They can consider shaheed, but they are still given the ghusl, as they are not one which is killed by someone else. Those were the 6 things which obligate the person do ghusl, obligate al-tahara al-kubra. The next section, now we have entered into al-tahara min al-najasa, removing impurities. So we covered al-tahara, which is washing oneself in wudu or ghusl. Now we will enter into removing najasat, removing impurities. So this is the second section, the second condition for salah. The first was الطهارة من الحدث الصغرى والحدث الأصغر والأكبر, to have purity from both hadith akbar and hadith asghar, major and minor states of impurity. The second is removing impure substances, izalatun najasa. This is the second condition for salah. And he says, وهي مشتملة على أربعة أشياء. This section contains 4 things. النجاسة, the first thing is, what are those impure substances? ومزيل, the one who is doing the removal of these najasat. والمزال به, the thing by which this najasa is removed, which is al-ma' tahur, pure water. والمزال عنه, and the thing which this impurity is removed from, which is the body of a person and their clothes and the place they are praying. These 4 sections the Imam will speak about now. So the first one is An-Najasa. What are those impure substances? He says, Al-awwal, bawlun wa gha'itun min ghayri ma'kulin. The urine and feces of all creatures except for one which is ma'kul, which is permissible to eat. Animals which are permissible to eat, their bowl, their urine and their ghayit, their feces is pure. Which is, for example, sheep, cows, chickens, so on. These things, their bowl and ghayit is pure. As for things which are غير مأكول اللحم, things which cannot be eaten, which are haram to eat, then the bowl and ghayit is impure, mutlaqan, unrestrictedly. So that includes humans and includes animals which are not allowed to eat, such as, for example, as-siba', animals which are carnivorous, which are predatorial, such as lions and dogs and so on. All of these, they are impure. The exception to this is ما لا نفس له سائلة, something which does not have blood circulation in their body, which are insects. For insects, they are tahir, they are pure, and their bawl wa ghayit is also pure. Their feces and urine is also pure in the relied upon position of the madhab. Even though it's not permissible to eat them, or to eat most of them except for al-jarad, because insects are considered mustaqdara, something which is disgusting, something which is filthy, according to the Arab, the classical Arab people which the Prophet ﷺ came to. So because of that, they are haram to eat, but despite them being haram to eat, they are both tahir, pure, and also the things which come out of their body, which is al-bawl wal-ghayt and so on, this is also pure. So that was the first thing, which is the first impurity, which was al-bawl wal-ghayt min ghayri ma'kul. The second one is wa khamr, alcohol. This is also an impurity. And more specifically, the madhab says al-muskir al-ma'i', something which is muskir, intoxicating, and it is ma'i', it is liquid. If it is something which is not intoxicating, then this is tahir, pure. And likewise, if it is intoxicating but it is solid, it's not liquid, such as, for example, various forms of drugs or things which are intoxicating but they are not liquid, then this is also tahir, pure, even though it's of course haram to consume because intoxication is haram, but the physical substance is considered pure. So khamr, it is impure, and it does not become pure إلا إذا انقلب خلا بنفسه, except if it becomes vinegar, as in the intoxicating element of it is removed, it's changed into vinegar by itself, meaning someone doesn't do it to it. If it's by the action of a person is actively making it into vinegar by adding ingredients to it or mixing it or doing any other sort of thing to it, then in that case it does not become pure, even if it becomes vinegar after that, and even if it's no longer intoxicating, because the asl is khamr. The only time it becomes tahir bil istihala, in changing, it is when it changes binafsihi, by itself. So that was the second thing which is impure. The next is mentioned وَكُلُّ حَيْوَانٍ مُحَرَّمٍ فَوْقَ الْهِرِّ, any animal which is muharram, which is haram to eat, which is bigger in size than a cat, al-hir. As for a cat and something which is smaller than that, for example, mice or other rodents or other small animals, then those are tahir, yani their bodies are pure. But as for a cat or something which is larger than that, then they are something which is larger than a cat, for example, big canines or other large animals which cannot be eaten, such as donkeys and so on, then those animals are impure, najis, meaning their body is impure, and the liquids from their body are impure, such as their saliva, and also sha'ruhum, their hair, and things like that. These are all impure. All of their body is impure. And the only exception to this is something which is the size of a cat, something which is smaller. But the things which are pure, the size of a cat and smaller, their bawl al-gha'it is still impure. The urine and feces is still impure because they are not ma'kul lahm, they are not halal to eat. If they're halal to eat, then the bawl and gha'it, the urine and feces is pure, and the whole body is pure, regardless of their size, whether they are big or small. The next is وَجِلْدُ كُلُّ مَيْتَةٍ لَا يَطْهُرُ بِالدِّبَاغ. The skin of every maytah, of every dead animal. Dead animal meaning an animal which is not slaughtered according to the Sharia. So for example, if a cow was to drop dead from a disease, then this would be considered maytah, a dead animal, and they would be impure, najis, even though a cow whilst alive is tahir, is pure. And in this case, the maytah, the dead animal, their skin is impure, and so is the rest of their body. عظمه ولحمه وجلده, all of the body is impure, the whole animal is impure. وجلده, and its skin, لا يطهر بالدباغ, the skin does not become tahir, it does not become pure by dibagh, by tanning. You know how skins are tanned, animal skins are tanned to make leather. If the animal skin was taken from maytah, from a dead animal which was not slaughtered, then it does not become pure by tanning it. The only time the skin of an animal becomes pure after its death is when this animal was slaughtered and it is something which is allowed to slaughter, meaning something which is ma'kul lahm, something which can be eaten. If the animal was not slaughtered, as in it died by itself, or it died in a way which is not slaughtering, such as if it fell off a cliff and so on, then the skin cannot be pure, and it cannot be purified by tanning, by a dibagh. Likewise, if it was slaughtered, but it's not an animal which is allowed to slaughter, like a pig, because it's not ma'kul lahm, it's not something which is allowed to eat, then their skin also does not become pure, neither by a dibagh nor by the slaughtering, neither by the tanning or slaughtering. And at dibagh, the tanning, although it does not purify any skins from maytah, from a dead animal, it does allow a person, it makes it halal to use the skin of a animal which was pure in its life, tahir fil hayah, which was, for example, an animal which is allowed to eat, ma'kul lahm, or an animal which is the size of a cat or smaller. These animals, their skin becomes permissible to use after their death, bid-dibagh, when they are tanned, even though they are not tahir, even though the skin, this jild, it is najis, it is impure, but it's allowed to use fil yabis, with the condition that you use it in dry things, because if it's used in liquids or things relating to liquids, such as using it as a container to hold water, then this would not be permissible, since it would cause the najasa, the impurity, to spread, as liquids spread impurities, whereas solids, dry objects, do not cause the impurity to spread. The next thing he mentions is وَعَظْمُ كُلِّ مَيْتَةٍ, the bones of every dead animal. And this also comes down to what we mentioned before about al-maytah, the dead animal. The whole body is najis. عظمه وجلده ولحمه وشحمه غير حيوان بحر لا ينجس بموته, except for an animal which is from the sea. حيوان بحر, animals from the sea, whether they're fish or other than the fish, any animal which lives in the sea, these animals are tahir, are pure, ومأكل لحم, and they are permissible to eat, ولا ينجس بموته, and they do not become impure if they die. So a fish or any other animal from the sea, when they die, it's still permissible to eat them, and it's still permissible to use their skin, or obviously fish don't have skin, but that's what's intended here. And the second thing he mentions, وَآدَمِي, and a human. As in, a human, they do not become najis, they do not become impure by death. When they die, they are still considered tahir, still pure, regardless of whether it's a Muslim or a kafir. And also, this includes مَا لَا نَفْسَ لَهُ سَائِلَةٌ, something which does not have blood circulation, which is, as you mentioned, insects. These are also tahir, pure, both in life and in death, even after they die. The next section is وَأَمَّا الْمُزِيلُ فَهُوَ كُلُّ مَنْ يُحْسِنُ. The next section is وَأَمَّا الْمُزِيلُ فَهُوَ كُلُّ مَنْ يُحْسِنُ الْإِزَالَةَ. As for al-muzil, the one doing the removing of impurities, of the najasa, then this is كُلُّ مَنْ يُحْسِنُ الْإِزَالَةَ, anyone who's able to remove the najasa, to remove the impurity. This is because izalatul najasa, removing impurities, it does not have the condition of an-niyya. It's not required for the person to have intention when removing it. So if the najasa is removed without intention, by accident, then this would still fulfill the condition. So for example, if a person was to, if the ground was to be najis, impure, from urine or something, and then rain to come down and wash it, then the rain washing the ground, it has made it tahir. It has made it pure, despite there not being any niyyah. لأن إزالة النجاسة من باب التروك. Because removing najasa, the ruling of it is min babi turuk, is about leaving things off, leaving off impurities. And it's not min babi al-fi'l, about doing the action. The thing intended is not the action itself, rather what's intended is having the najasa away from you, having the impurity away from you. So the next part he says is وَأَمَّا الْمُزَالُ بِهِ, as for the thing by which the najasa is removed, فَالْمَاءُ الطَّهُورُ, it is purifying water. As we mentioned before in the beginning, that ma is either tahir or tahur or najis. The water which is required for removing najasa is al-ma' al-tahur, water which is both pure in itself and purifying. If the water is not purifying, then it's not permissible to use, neither for al-tahara, for making wudu or ghusl, nor is it allowed to use for izalat najasa, for removing impurities. So the impurity is not removed by water which is not tahir. So for example, al-ma' al-musta'mal, water which has been used for wudu. This water, if you were to use it to remove najasa, the ruling of the najasa is not removed. You still need to wash it again, and you need to wash it with water which is tahur, which is pure water. And the condition in removing a najasa in the madhab is that it has to be with 7 washes, 7 separate washes. So it's not sufficient for a person, for example, if they have some impurity on their clothes, to put under the sink and wash it just once. Even if they let the water spill and pour on it for a long time, this is counted as a single wash. Rather, it has to be 7 separate washes. مع العصر, with squeezing, meaning the thing being washed, the clothes, if it's something which can be squeezed, to squeeze the water out of it, then this is conditioned. And if it's something which cannot be squeezed, then taqlibuhu, to move it around, to flip it over, and things like that. And this 7 washes is conditioned for washing a thawb, fabrics, clothing, so on, wal badan, and the body, washing impurities of the body, which includes al-istinja, washing oneself after using the toilet. This requires 7 ghuslat. As for washing najasa off the ground, then this only requires a single ghasla wahida, a single washing, which is just to pour enough water to remove the najasa, the impurity, and does not require 7 washes. And in removing a najasa, impurities, if there is baqa al-athar, some remnants of it after, which cannot be removed by merely washing it, then this does not affect the ruling, and it is considered as though it's not present. So this baqa al-athar, this remaining of al-lawn or al-rih or kilahuma, the remaining of the color of the impurity or the smell of the impurity, or both of them, if it's something which cannot be removed by merely washing it with water, then the ruling is as though it's tahir, pure. As for baqa al-ta'am, the remaining of its taste, if the taste of the najasa, the impurity, remains, then this is not sufficient. Rather, the person has to continue washing until the taste is gone. The next part which he mentions is وَمَعَ التُّرَابِ فِي الْكَلْبِ وَالْخِنْزِيرِ. This washing of the najasa بالماء الطهور, with pure water, it is also conditioned that a person has to use a turab, soil, when washing away the najasa of al-kalb, of a dog, wal-khinzir, of a pig. Najasa which is from a dog or a pig, in order to remove this, the person has to wash it with water, 7 ghasalat, 7 washes, and one of those washes has to be mixed with soil, a turab, or something else which is cleansing, cleaning, such as sabun, soap, or other different chemicals and things which are used for cleaning. All of those take the same ruling. One of the 7 washes has to be mixed with this cleansing substance, whether it's soil or sabun or soap or something else, and it has to be mixed with the water in this wash. So if a person just puts the soil on it, then pours water on it, this has not fulfilled the condition. Rather, the condition is that the soil, the turab, or the soap or whatever, it has to be mixed with the water in that washing, and the remaining 6 washes are done with just water. This is for najasatul kalb wal khinzir, removing the impurity of a dog and of al khinzir, of a pig. And of course here this is not removing the najasa of the dog itself or the pig itself, because a dog and a pig, the najasa is ayniyah. It is something which is najis, which is impure in itself. As najasa is 2 types. Something is either najis ayni, or it is mutanajis, something which is impure within itself, or it's something which has become impure by coming into contact with an impure substance. So things which are najasa ayniyah, some things which are impure within themselves, such as al-bawl wal-ghayat, as you mentioned, urine and feces, or a dog, or a pig, or an animal which is larger than the size of a cat, and so on. These things, or khamr, alcohol, their impurity is ayniyah, it is within themselves, so they can never become pure, except for the condition for khamr, alcohol, becoming pure if it changes into vinegar by itself. And as for things which are mutanajjisa, which are pure within the essence, but they have become impure by coming into contact with najasa, with impurity, then this is the one which can be purified, which can be cleaned, and the najasa can be removed from using water. And the third thing he mentions, وَالْأَحْجَارِ فِي الْإِسْتِجْمَارِ خَاصَةً, and using rocks or anything else which is munaqqin, which removes the filth, removes the impurity, in al-istijmar, which is to wipe oneself after using the toilet. The wiping there in al-istijmar, it removes the hukm. Yani, this is izalatu hukm al-najasa. The condition in it is that it has to be ثلاث مسحات منقية, 3 cleaning wipes, then this najasa is removed in its ruling, meaning that the person is now clean from the najasa, the feces or the urine, by this istijmar. And the minimum, as I said, is 3, but it can be more than 3 if 3 is not sufficient to remove it. So a person, for example, they do 3 wipes and then there's still some remaining feces, then they have to continue to wipe until that remaining feces is gone and there's nothing which can be removed by mere wiping. And the istihbab in istijmar, something which is recommended in istijmar using tissues or using stones or anything else in wiping, is that a person does an odd number of wipes, whether it's 3 or 5 or 7. And it's not conditioned that they be 3 separate pieces of tissue or 3 separate rocks. Rather, it's sufficient for it to be a single object, as long as it has enough space or enough size, enough sides to do the wiping with. And this is izalatu hukm najasa. It removes the ruling of najasa, as if that najasa is not present, even if it's not entirely removing aynun najasa, removing the impurity physically in totality. Since mere wiping without using water, it would still remove some, it would still cause some najasa to be remaining, a tiny amount. But this tiny amount is ma'fu'an. It is not taken into consideration. As in some cases, najasa is ma'fu'an. For example, a small amount of najasa on the bottom of a person's shoes in salah, after they have rubbed the shoes in soil, or in soil, then in such a case the person can pray in their shoes, even though the rubbing in the soil would not cause the najasa to be removed in its totality. In order to remove it in totality, a person would have to wash the bottom of their shoes. But here the najasa is ma'fu'an. Likewise, ad-damul yasir, a small amount of blood on the body of a person, or on their clothing, or in the place that they're praying. This small amount of blood, it is also ma'fu'an. It is also excused, as long as the blood is from haywanin tahir, from a pure animal. If the blood was from an impure animal, like for example a dog, then this is not ma'fu'an, rather the person has to remove it. After that, he says, وَأَمَّا الْمُزَالَ عَنْهُ فَكُلُّ مَا عَلِقَتْ النَّجَاسَةُ بِهِ وَيَتَطَهَّرُ الْمُصَلِّي فِي بَدَنِهِ وَثَوْبِهِ وَبُقْعَةِ صَلَاتِهِ. And as for the thing from which the najasa is removed, as in the condition in salah, is that the najasa has to be removed from the following 3 things in order for the salah to be valid, which is firstly badanahu, his body. A person has to remove all najasat, all impurities from their body before praying salah. And second is wathawbahu, and the clothes which he is wearing in his salah. And the third thing is buqatu salatihi, the place where he is praying the salah, which is the place where he does sajda and anything in between that. So anything which is where his torso would be in sajda and so on, all of this area has to be pure and there has to be no najasa, no impurity on it. As for if the najasa is around him but not in the place where he does sujood, then this is fine. La ba'sa bihi. So after that he goes on to say, وَالثَّالِث الْوَقْتِ, the third condition for salah is the entering of its time. And this we will speak about in the next lesson, inshaAllah ta'ala. Wallahu a'lam, wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.